Hello, folks. Bill and Brian here with Energy Road. Hey, listen, we're out here talking about the weekly update. And let me tell you what a week it's been. Just the last 3 days have been crazy. And so we're going to be talking about this. And my gosh, the world has changed in 10 days. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 days? Maybe we know, maybe we don't. Let's talk about it.
Well,
Brian,
and
Operation Epic Fury.
we're gonna talk about Operation Epic Fury and the potential. We're going to discuss about the possibility of the death of the petrodollar. Petrodollar has been a staple for underpinning currency, underpinning oil, and there is a lot of layers to this. And we're not going to have the time to dive into everything because we would probably be here for, I don't know, 30 years, something
Yeah,
like
because
that.
we had to go longer than that. We have to go back to the Nixon era when we came
That's
off
what
the
I'm
gold standards. Yeah.
So 50 years. We'd have to be here for 50 years to discuss every movement along the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this from an academic standpoint, take a look at currency, take a look at oil, take a look at the recent events and what this might mean for the changing geopolitical landscape, the oil flows and currency flows. So this is we're going to talk about how the 2026 U.S.-Iran conflict permanently shattered 50 years of global energy order and rewrote the rules. So the global energy Pax Americana is over. Is that how you say that? Pax Americana? Um,
I think that's how you say it.
I think, okay. So February 2026 Operation Epic Fury did not merely trigger a regional conflict, it shattered the framework. And that framework really has embedded into it the petrodollar. So let's take a look at the current timeline. February 28th, Epic Fury launched a massive US Israeli strikes on Iranian leadership and nuclear facilities. And the Iranian supreme leader was reported killed. Um, I think that's since been confirmed, but in news cycles
Yes.
like this, it's good to listen to all different news and everything because there's grains of truth in everything. Early March, Iran declares a total blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, and this is a shot as of March 10th at 2:40 p.m. Central Time. As you can see, there are no ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there's transponder spoofing and other reasons where there may be ships there, but you're not going to see them because they turn
Right.
transponders off.
Exactly.
Mid-March, oil prices spiked up to 120 plus over the weekend. On Sunday's open, it launched up to 119, and it on widely. Well, it's been swinging wildly. We went up to 115 or 119, down to 76, I think, and then we were stabilizing right now. We are
Yeah, we're going
recording
to have to
this
call
on.
that. We're going to call that early March because mid March doesn't start until tomorrow.
Oh, that's true. That is definitely true. So, needless to say, this is a very delicate situation because for anybody that is unaware, there is roughly 104, 105, depending on your source, million barrels of supply and demand. That's supply and demand of crude oil in the world. And about 20 to 25, depending on if you're counting liquids, natural gas liquids, 20 to 25 goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So when we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, which is right here, which again, you've got Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman. That's the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a very critical, and there's roughly 20 million, 21 million barrels a day that flow through the strait. 83% of a tanker traffic drop, or let's put it this way, percentage doesn't do it justice. according to one of our favorite shipping guys on YouTube, what's going on with shipping. Sal, if you happen to ever be listening, hi Sal, we love your stuff. Prior to this incident, over 120 to 130 ships would go through the Strait of Hormuz. It's down to 1 or 2. Now,
Right.
again, there's a lot of inaccuracies on whether or not that's on a per day basis. So 122 down to 2. It's important to realize there's two things. We're talking about energy and we're talking about the petrodollar, but also the region's food supply comes in via the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a very dramatic event, and this
Right.
will have lasting impacts. So,
And so just remember
um,
also that 21 million barrels, only 2 of it comes from Iran.
right. Yes. Yes. Because Iran produces, I think, three
Right.
and a
And
half
do
million
about one
barrels
and
a
a half
day. Yeah.
and have about one and a half local.
Yeah. All right. So let me read off some numbers and then we'll talk about them. Oil spike, $10. We've seen $10 both ways. 120-day closure. Some people are projecting that means that we'll be at 215 a barrel. China gets 22% of their oil from sanctioned countries such as Iran and Russia. And bypass pipelines cover only 34%, meaning if 21 million barrels travel through the Strait of Hormuz, there's about a third of it that could go other routes. Saudi Arabia is turning one of their pipelines around. Um, and I've seen different numbers on this, but supposedly the U.S. military cost is $5 billion a day. I've seen costs as low as 800 million a day. So I don't know what to believe right now. But this 2026 shock versus 2022 Russia, this has the potential to be 17 times from a volatility perspective. So lots of numbers to absorb there. Um, the bypass pipeline is not going to be a solution. So these are just rooting us in this.
Right.
So what does this mean? The rise of the Petroyuan? Yeah, maybe. China now sources
Well,
22% of its oil.
this is where Brian and I probably have a disagreement on this, right?
We're going to get in a fist
Which
fight.
is how much?
Huh? What?
Now, how much oil does China import? How much oil does China import
I know they're
total?
I had 10 million. Do you know how much
Yeah.
it is?
So if 22%, that means you're talking about 2 million barrels a day.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
We import more than China does.
That's true. We import about 6 million barrels a day. And this is part of the reason that we wanted to talk about this topic, because there's fear about the petrodollar, the petroyuan, what this means. And one of the possibilities is that the U.S. currency actually loses some strength. However, the recent market is actually showing dollar strength. So here's a petrodollar analogy. It was like a universal membership card, and every country needed to buy entry into the global
Right.
market. And now, is there other clubs developing? And that's what we're looking at. So a couple of quick notes before we move on. Shadow Fleet. There's 400 uninsured BRICS tankers operating outside the U.S. legal reach. Strait of Malacca bypass.
Now,
This was.
so let's talk about a minute. The shadow fleet, we call it uninsured, but they could be insured by their own country.
Mhm.
So Iran does their own.
Uninsured
Iran
from the
does their own
source
insurance.
we're aware of. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, I was going
Okay.
to say because all of Iran tankers are uninsured in everybody's mind, but they actually insure their own because they're owned by the state. So if they're owned
Yep.
by the state doesn't have to insure them.
Yep.
And so, and Iran has, I think I counted, there's 32 VLCCs is what they have.
Yeah. Um, and those, what is a VLCC for those listening?
It's very secret language. Very large crude carrier. So,
I tell you, the
yeah, we're
energy
not good.
business doesn't
I know
cease
it's
to
just
amaze
silly.
me. So this is one that
Great
as we were
marketing,
putting
great
the
marketing.
yeah, this is one as we were putting together that that I learned a little bit more about, which was the Malacca bypass, which is land pipelines through Myanmar that circumvent the U.S. Navy Pacific patrols. So this is interesting. I think there's going to be some land infrastructure as a result of this, because this is a problem that we've been aware of since the 70s, I guess.
Yeah.
That's when we first became aware that this is a constraint point and this is a problem. Um, there's also teapot refiners, which are independent Chinese factories processing ghost oil to obscure the origin. So the key is you can think about it this way. Iran was sanctioned economically. Russia is sanctioned economically. That has not impacted their production. That's totally independent. It is a financial
Right.
move, not a physical one. So make sure that sanction doesn't mean that they're going to stop producing, stop exporting. There is likely going to be a market for it. It's probably just not going to be worth as much. Is that a fair way of saying that, Bill?
Yeah, and really, it's a sanction. Just remember, it's a U.S. sanction or a UK sanction. What that means is that we're not going to buy their oil, and we are going to be upset with anyone who does buy their oil.
Yeah,
And so, a good example is with this war going on, the U.S. has lifted sanctions for Russian oil being bought by India.
right.
So it's really more of you know you can't keep people from doing things unless you have some sort of hammer. The only hammer we have is money and military.
So, so one thing that I want to point out is as we were talking about imports, this is inside of Rogue Radar, which is available down below if you want to learn a little bit about it. But it is a daily resource with daily recaps on the energy market that covers fundamentals, technicals for oil, natural gas liquids, refined products, and electricity. Most of the focus is in the U.S., but we do have international coverage. Now, what I wanted to talk about, there's links down below if you want to learn a little bit more about us. It's $179 a month, and people in the energy industry are like, that's a steal. It's probably worth 10 to 20 times that. So when we look at crude imports, we import 6.3 million barrels a day. Okay. And that's what the United States imports, 6.3 million barrels a day. 10% comes from the Middle East. So what are we really talking about? 600,000 barrels a day? This gets back to when we
Yeah.
talk about the difference between the Petroyuan, I'm not going to say that right, Petrodollar and Petroyuan, and why these numbers matter, because when we're talking about 2 million barrels a day, is that really going to set the tone of the market? Is 600,000 coming from the Middle East really going to impact? There's a lot of variables to look at. So what are some
By
of
the
the
way, we export about 3 million barrels, right?
yeah, I think it's 4. Yeah, 3.997. We're both right. That
That's
never
close to
happens.
the four to call it four.
That never happens. We're both right. Um, and so listen, if it is your first time here, Bill and
Right.
I have been in this industry a long time. We're friends. We poke fun at each other, and we often take differing sides of the market to really try and understand what is happening. So I'm going to state a myth, and then you're going to tell me the reality. Myth: U.S. energy independence equals protection. Does it?
Well, protection for you. If you're talking about protection for the U.S., it's a higher level on that. Protection across the world, no. I mean, what provides protection across the U.S. world is the U.S. Navy because it's a blue water navy. It's provided. It's been the policeman of the
I
seas
think they're
forever.
talking about energy independence. Is it truly independent?
Well, it's as an independent as till the time you run out of it and you need some more.
Here's what I'd say to that. We import 6.3 million barrels a day. We export 4. We're not we're not independent because we refine different types of crude. And now, could we be? Possibly, but we would have to reduce our consumption. So our consumption is still a little high. However, when you look at it, we are still importing crude oil as we're exporting, and that is because of an arbitrage of our refining system. So we're not
So I would say,
truly disconnected.
I would, I would say the myth here is that U.S. independence means only oil.
Okay, say that again
And
because it
so when you
broke up.
start talking about energy as a whole, we might said U.S. energy independence isn't only oil. And so I think when you look at it that way, that maybe we're a lot more independent than people think
Hmm.
because we have a lot more resources.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
When we
could we
talk
be?
about
And
natural
could we?
gas, completely.
Right, exactly. So,
Yeah.
so that's where you have to watch the language a lot of times and what the definitions of the word because you want to be um, making sure you're talking about both sides. But I do believe it is a myth that the U.S. energy independence equals protection because you just never know who's out there doing what with what.
Okay. Um.
Security, maybe protection, maybe not.
Right. Myth: blockades require a navy. The reality?
No.
What's the reality there, Bill?
Well, first of all, I'm going to go against the drones. Don't concern me. They're small. They pack, you know, they can cause a problem, but they don't. I haven't seen a drone sink a ship yet. Some of the naval drones are basically torpedoes on water, being that they've caused damage, but they literally haven't sunk a ship.
Right.
Now, the ICBMs, the Iran has bigger missiles that can sink ships,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why the U.S. Air Force has been pounding those deals, and I would say that there's a chance, probably a large chance, that we don't know where they all are, but the intelligence gets better and better with every day, and so it's um it's interesting to watch. But you do not need a navy to blockade the Strait of Hormuz.
Mm-hmm.
Other blockades, you would if you're trying to blockade the east coast of the United States, you need a navy.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. Um. Now here's a myth: sanctions stop China. We both know this one. No, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
that's not. It
No, it
doesn't.
doesn't. It doesn't do
It
anything.
makes it difficult, but it doesn't stop things.
No, it actually helps Chinese purchases of lower priced product. So sanctions actually help China buy cheaper crude, right?
Yeah, but then they have to sell it to us, which means they have to buy it in U.S. dollars. They get U.S. dollars. They have to do something with their
Why do
U.S.
they have to
dollars.
sell it to us?
We're their largest market.
Oh, you're talking about once it goes through the refining and the manufacturing
No, I
and
mean
the product side?
all the products that come out of China. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they need the oil
Okay.
to.
So what Bill's saying is that it's not just the crude.
Right.
They're purchasing the crude in yuan and then manufacturing and then selling their products in dollars. So this is where the interrelationship of currency comes back in. So this is the chaos premium engine. Fear spike, insurance collapse, physical blockade. So all of these are happening at the same time where you have fear, you have insurance, and you have volatility. We have swung $30 in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
So when you
Up and down, by the way.
up and down. So we've gone from that's a 30% swing because we started this I'm going to call it crazy train. We started this crazy train at 90, went up to 119, back down to 76, and then have climbed back up.
Yeah.
So this is nothing but extremely volatile. And we're not just talking, this conflict is not just about oil. Water is the war's most lethal weapon. 60% of the Gulf water supply, and I'm not talking about seaways, I am talking about drinking water. But 60% comes from
Potable water.
desalination plants. And now
Exactly.
some of those have been targeted and hit. So this is going to get very tricky very quick. And add into that, 80% of the food of the region comes in via the Strait of Hormuz. This is going to become a humanitarian problem if it is not resolved very quickly. Now, let's go back to how the world is rerouting. Saudi Aramco is pivoting back over to the Red Sea. So they have a pipeline that goes east west. So they're just pivoting from their ports on this side of the country over to this side. Now there's still the Suez Canal and a pipeline through Egypt. Those are the routes, but there's only so much that can go through that way. Another one, the Sumed pipeline is that pipeline I just talked about, and China's Malacca bypass. I don't think that's completed yet. Do you know if that's completed?
No, it's not. It's not completed yet.
I think that's very early stages. So, three forces that are reshaping global energy: the risk trade era. Buying oil is geopolitical insurance. There's upside volatility in oil markets, and buying oil is geopolitical insurance. Friend shoring energy, purchasing only from political allies. Right now, these relationships, trading partnerships are shifting and changing. You see that between China and the US. You see that between the Middle East and Asia and Europe. Europe is pivoting between all of them. Because right now, Europe, from an LNG perspective, I know we're talking about oil, but right now, Europe gets a large portion of LNG, and 25% roughly just went down in Qatar. And it's going to take them probably 30 days to cycle
Yeah.
back up whenever they cycle back up. And I would say we're going to be short LNG, and the European supplies on storage is very limited. Fortunately,
So
we're
I
approaching
think
the
that's going to
end
have a
of
big
winter.
difference. Yeah, I think that's going to have a big impact on Australia of all places.
Oh,
Simply
yeah.
because they're the only ones that might have some swing capacity on LNG.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be
Yeah.
interesting. A lot of the
well,
smaller LNG facilities will come into play as well.
because a lot of people have postulated, oh, this is great for U.S. LNG and natural gas prices in the U.S. are going to lift. No, it's not really going to have impact because we are exporting everything that is possible. Where
Right.
those cargoes go may shift,
Right.
but it doesn't mean any incremental demand for the United States. We are exporting everything that is physically possible. So, what are the futures for the global energy order? Here's three possible futures. Possible. One is this accelerates energy transition to renewables. Another, on the other lens, is kind of crisis and caution. This creates a perpetual gray zone warfare over choke points. Okay, there's kind of
Right.
a half full, half empty there view. The realistic, the world splits into two parallel energy markets: $1 denominated, one yuan denominated, with trade blocks that harden, and every energy transaction carries geopolitical price tag. That one, I believe, there's going to be subsections. Um,
Well, there is, but when you look at it, if you get paid in yuan, in the Chinese yuan, which has no commercial viability outside of China and is completely controlled by their government, does that make you feel secure? No, you convert those to US dollars as fast as you can.
I may have a different opinion there. I think all fiat
So
currency is in the same lens.
well, maybe okay. I agree with you. You could see it that way, but I'm telling you that there are significant difference between what China's doing and what we're doing with our economies.
Oh, completely.
And China has the right to have a lot
Completely.
of, yeah. And so,
Here it chopped up.
yeah, I know you're gonna have you're gonna have to finish it. You're gonna have to finish up
Okay.
because I'm losing my internet. I can tell it already.
Okay.
So,
All right.
so
Well,
you get a free ride
so
for the
what
rest of the show.
so what Bill and I are talking about is the nuances of fiat currency and the dollar, the yuan, and all currencies fit in this weird space of, well, what is the value of it? Well, really the value of the dollar, the value of crude oil is really determined by the other party that is buying it. So, what is the value of a dollar? What is the value of a yuan? What is the value of a barrel of crude oil? They're all denominated in different things, and they're all predicated on values that are relationships to other values. So when you look at it, it gets very tangled very quickly, and there's a lot of currency angles that we could go down. But what what Bill was saying is that this reinforces the dollar strength, and that's what is going to actually harden and make more secure the U.S. dollar. And taking the other side of that argument, there could be with more traded partnerships in yuan that could undermine that relationship that the dollar's held for the last 50 some odd 60 years. So that's kind of what we're debating, and there's a lot of different. We'd have to be here 50 years to unpack that one. Um, I I believe the dollar may be weakening. Bill may think it's strengthening, and ultimately, time will tell. Right? Um, that's what we're looking at. So for cascading threats to watch: hyperinflation. If the dollar does weaken, there could be inflation, but there's going to be inflation because of the lack of the increase in crude oil price is going to filter through to all the different products. Another is there is a risk of an environmental catastrophe. If a drone hits an oil tanker, we are talking about massive oil spills and water collapse. This is something that would happen very quickly if desalination plants do in fact get targeted, which some strikes have already happened there, and a global debt crisis. At $5 billion a day, the military expenditure, the US is accumulating war costs it doesn't have to finance. So now, whether or not that's going to happen, whether or not that's true, time will tell, because $5 billion, I've heard a billion, I've heard 800 million. I don't know what that number is. I think it's too early or not too early. I don't have access to the right info. And if you have access, drop us a comment below. So some strategic unknowns. Will Saudi Arabia formally join the Petroyuan system? Ooh, that would put a chink in the U.S. dollar. Can the U.S. counter $50,000 drones with anything other than $2 million missiles? Because that dynamic is happening right now, and we're seeing this in real time. Who inherits the 400 ship shadow fleet if Iran collapses? So those are some questions. And lastly, I'm going to leave it this way. The world's operating system is currently being unwritten, or not unwritten, rewritten, unwritten. Well, maybe unwritten and rewritten. So that's what we're looking at. So a lot to unpack here. Iran, US, a lot of dynamics are happening. And if you're just looking at crude oil, you're missing it. 1 no, 2 yes, 3 no, 1 All right. So, um, so as we're looking at this, don't just look at the crude oil. Don't just look at natural gas. Those are very, very big things to pay attention to. Look at food. Look at water. Those are humanitarian crisis. But beyond this, pull your lens back. Take a look at currency relationships and trade relationships because they're currently shifting and changing. So that's what we have this week. Let us know what you think. This was an open dialogue. Would love to hear your thought. Is this the end of the petrodollar? I know Bill's answer, but I want to hear from you. And I think he's typing one more thing. So I'm gonna let him type that before we close it off. Are you posting it? He's about to post it. But I think, yeah, see you folks. All right. All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk soon and have a good one.